My kids said it was a blustery day today, which I thought was kind of cute. Oh, like Pooh Bear. They're like, it's a blustery day today. I'm like, yes, it is. Tomorrow's going to be like up to 70-mile-an-hour gusts, which is crazy, right? That's windy. That's really windy. My little one, my youngest, was all like, do you think if we open an umbrella, we could fly away? And I was like, I wish it worked that way. That'd be a lot of fun. But it'll be windy tomorrow, right? So hold on for that, I suppose. And we have class today, we have class Thursday, and then next week is Thanksgiving. So I know that the college doesn't have the week off. We have Thursday and Friday, which is not nearly enough. Is anyone going anywhere, like traveling at all for Thanksgiving? But we won't have class. So I built it into the schedule from the beginning. It's on the syllabus that we won't have class on Tuesday. Obviously Thursday is Thanksgiving. So we'll have class like normal this week, Tuesday, Thursday, and then we'll have Tuesday off next week. At least for us. I hope some of your other classes do that too. And then we'll come back from Thanksgiving break and we don't have very much after that. Our class is we're definitely getting down to it, which is kind of crazy. So our plan for today is to kind of wrap this up relatively quickly. We just have 2 slides left. And then we're going to start chapter 14. And for chapter 14, I always show a film. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity to practice for the final paper, which is due just after Thanksgiving break. So what we're doing after we finish this is chapter 14, we'll be covering through a movie. It's kind of an older movie, but it's a really great opportunity to look at diagnostic criteria and examples from a film, and then causes and treatment and a diagnosis, exactly what you're doing in your final paper. And I think it'll give you a really great opportunity to kind of build up to and practice that a little bit. So we'll wrap this up first, and then we'll get to that in a few minutes. And if you remember back, right, we finished all the personality disorders. So we went through all 10 of them, and causes and treatment are usually talked about together, right, for all of these. And some of the disorders have like more unique causes than others. But as a group, these disorders are thought to like be the result of almost the perfect storm of factors, of things going wrong, if you will. It's a very interesting perspective. It's called a psychopathological developmental perspective. I don't want to do that. But it's this kind of multidimensional risk perspective, like we talked about with eating disorders and substance disorders, where everything kind of builds on what came before. So in theory, I should probably reorganize this, but if we look at like these factors, it's thought that somebody's born with a genetic vulnerability to get one of these personality disorders, right? There's a genetic component, a biological neurotransmitter related component. And then what happens is because somebody has this genetic vulnerability and biological vulnerability, it starts to shape the way that early childhood and parent interactions occur, right? If you're born with some stuff going on, it's going to cause your parents to react to you a little bit differently. And because they react to you a little bit differently, that starts to change the way that you think about yourself and perceive yourself, which then causes different environmental events to occur, right? Modeling and conditioning and things happening in your life. And so all of these just kind of build on each other. And so it's thought to be almost like, again, a perfect storm of things going wrong, where people have that biological vulnerability coupled with cognitive distortions. Then things happen in their environment. Maybe there's some kind of trauma or environmental event, and then everything kind of builds from there. So it's very much a combination of forces that cause people to have these issues. Okay, so we talked a little bit about borderline personality disorder having like more of an abandonment component to it. Everyone has kind of little things that are unique, but as a group, it's very much all of these together, right? So it's not one thing that causes somebody to develop a personality disorder. It's kind of all of them working in tandem, creating that perfect storm. And it's similar with treatment. There are some treatments that are unique to each disorder, but in general, people with personality disorders don't tend to seek counseling, right? They don't tend to go to therapy, right? And each one of the disorders has kind of a unique problem with therapy. But if people do go to counseling for some reason, it's usually because their relationships are being challenged. They're having a hard time keeping a job because of some of the things going on, or like friendships are suffering. And so typically what therapists will do is try and work on teaching skills. So if they're struggling with empathy, let's teach you empathy. If you're struggling with feeling paranoid all the time, let's teach you to challenge those beliefs and try and turn them around. So really kind of working on the gap, whatever issue is the most prevalent. The tricky thing about therapy is if you think about each one of the personality disorders, there's going to be issues, right? The paranoid personality disorder individual isn't going to trust their therapist. They're going to think all that information is going to be used against them, is being given to the government. The narcissistic personality disorder is going to think they know more than the therapist. Why would I listen to you? I'm so much better than you and I know more. The borderline personality disorder individual might fall in love with their therapist and have bad boundaries. Antisocial might manipulate, harm, and lie to their therapist, right? The dependent one will cling to their therapist. So each of them by nature has some problems. So if people do go to therapy, it's mainly focusing on trying to teach those skills, right? Trying to fill in those gaps. Sometimes we can use medication. Like if people's anxiety or mood is out of control, you might be able to do like an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety medication to help them out. But it's a lot of social skills, filling in those gaps. You can't get rid of a personality disorder. By nature, it's your personality, it's who you are. So these are notoriously difficult to treat. But a lot of people do learn to live with them, right? They learn to manage them really well, especially if they're kind of milder. You might be able to challenge and learn to deal with these pretty reasonably by filling in some of these gaps and learning better ways of interacting with the people around you. So a lot of hope, but it's difficult to eliminate these completely just because it is your personality. It is who you are by definition. And your personality is very enduring, doesn't change very easily. The last thought in this chapter, and I've mentioned this a few times throughout, these disorders are really problematic. It would not surprise me at all if in the next DSM they are completely reworked. If one day they're eliminated or just completely reorganized. They're so often misdiagnosed. Two people with the exact same disorder can look very different, and people with different personalities can receive the same diagnosis, especially within clusters, right? Within groups, there's so much overlap that it can be very easy to mess these up, right? And it's, again, something that is so subjective. Clinicians vary so wildly in their judgments. Two people could go to the same, go to different therapists and receive very different diagnoses, right? And it might just be whatever that person sees that day. It might be that one therapist thinks it's not a disorder and the other one does. There's a lot of room for improvement here. And we often are looking at this question: are there better ways to classify personality disorders? In Europe, they use a system called the International Classification of Diseases, the ICD. It's their version of the DSM, basically. A lot of overlap, but a little bit different. And in the ICD, what they do is they look at personality through the big 5 personality traits, right? Which we're not covering necessarily in here, but the big 5 traits are something that are very statistically driven. There's a lot of research behind them. And they look at personality through that lens. And so it's definitely an area of future growth for us here. These disorders have a lot of issues. And so it wouldn't surprise me, as I said, to have them changed in the next DSM. They just updated the DSM-5 just this year, right, to the text revision. But I would assume in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll have a DSM-6. And it wouldn't surprise me that it's very different in the next DSM. We'll see what happens. Are there any kind of last thoughts or questions, comments, anything at all related to the personality disorders? I think if I could stress one thing just in terms of your papers, remember that you should only be diagnosing one personality disorder. So if you feel like your character might have more than one, pick the one that fits the best. And then what you'll want to do is maybe take a paragraph to describe things that don't quite fit. But don't do more than one. By nature, you can only really have one personality disorder. Okay. A couple of you wrote about more than one in your rough draft, so I just wanted to mention that. Yeah.
Frames of other.
Sure. Yeah. So what I've seen people do really successfully is focus their paper on one main disorder. So let's say you pick antisocial personality disorder, and your whole paper is about that. But then you take a paragraph and say there's some other stuff that doesn't quite fit. And here are my thoughts about that. And it could be that maybe they didn't portray it perfectly, or that person doesn't fit neatly into antisocial personality. And as long as you take like a paragraph or so to talk about it, I think that's the best way to do it. I've seen it done successfully that way quite a bit. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Mhm. You could, so I would pick, I mean, so a lot of people have more than one disorder, like 2 disorders isn't uncommon. So you could focus on both disorders and talk about both, or you could focus on the depression if you feel like that's the biggest thing, and then take a paragraph or 2 to talk about the PTSD stuff. As long as you address like the things that don't fit, you can do it in whichever way feels comfortable. So, and as a side note, and a couple of you have done this, if at any point before the final is due, you want me to look at a rough draft, I would be happy to. You can always email it to me. The final paper is due right after Thanksgiving break. I gave you that time. I thought it might be helpful to have that little bit of extra time. But if over break or this week, you want me to look at a rough draft, email it to me. And I'd be happy to give you any thoughts or feedback. If you're done like a day or 2 before it's due, I'd be happy to look at it. Yeah. Yeah, so there's a whole group that meets, like a huge committee, the hundreds of people that are psychologists and researchers. And so what they do is they look at new trends, they look at pop culture stuff, things that are happening in the world, they look at research. And when there's enough things that need to change, that's when they and they can agree on them, which is probably the most time-consuming part. Then they'll update it. So like the DSM-4, I want to say it was done in like the early 90s. And then the DSM-5 came out in 2013 or 12 or 13. So there's often big gaps in between. It was updated a couple times in the middle. They do like little text revisions. But yeah, it's usually a good like 5 to 10 years between editions. Because it takes a lot of time for them to analyze, synthesize, and look at all that and then agree on it. And so it's usually every like 5 to 10 years. And then everybody who works in the field has to be retrained based on the changes they make. So they try not to do it too often, and I think is the idea. Okay. So we'll say goodbye to the personality disorders. And the next chapter, chapter 14, has to do with disorders of childhood and adolescence. And as I said, rather than lecturing on chapter 14, I always show a film. And the movie we're gonna watch is called What's Eating Gilbert Grape. It's an older movie, but it's such a great movie for this because it gives you an opportunity to look at a character through a very like critical lens. Because there's a couple of things that could fit this character, and it gives you a chance to kind of think about it that way. So you're going to be looking at Arnie, who is played by a very young Leonardo DiCaprio. Oh. And this sheet, sorry, I'll be collecting from you after break. So we'll watch the movie today and Thursday. And then when we come back from break, we'll talk about it and I'll collect it. I also will be posting a link on Canvas. So if you miss Thursday for some reason, or you lose the paper and the video link will be on Canvas if you need to finish it up. But what I'd like you to do, this shouldn't be something you need to do outside of class. This should be something you could do during the movie. So number 1, you could definitely answer that while you're watching the show. But number 2 is a big one. What I'd really like to see you doing, and you should be doing this with your character you're doing for the paper, is make a bulleted list as we go through of all the things that you see Arnie doing that are kind of atypical, right? So right off the bat, you'll see him doing some things that aren't typical of someone who is his age, and they'll tell you that in the show. And so make a big bulleted list. Number 2 should have lots of stuff. So it's kind of like a running thing that you should be doing during the film. And then on Thursday, you might start looking at numbers 3 and 4 and 5 as we get a little bit farther into the movie. So today, really focus on number 2. As you're watching the show, be writing down anything, that's a good example of like a behavioral or cognitive deficit that you see in Arnie. Yeah. What was that? Yeah, these are like his symptoms, right? So you'll see right off the bat that he has, there's a part where he kills a grasshopper very early, and then he cries. He didn't understand that he killed it, right? And so that's something that's kind of odd for someone who's 17, right? And so anything that you see that's kind of unusual that you could think of as a symptom, that's what you would make a big bulleted list for number 2. And we'll go over that together before I collect them, but that's a good thing to focus on for today. Oh, he's here. I'm gonna turn off the lights. Obviously, I put on the captions, but stay with me, don't fall asleep, right? And we'll go all the way up to the end, and then we'll just resume with it on Thursday. Oh. Okay. All right, here we go.